Hello folks, today we're going to be talking about Star Swordsman Mockman. This is the new Transcendence hero that's come out to Idle Heroes, and as promised in yesterday's video, or technically my last video, which was today, we're going to be taking a look at this guy. He's got a lot of skills and he's a little on the complicated side, but hopefully after breaking him down, I'll give you guys a little bit of clarity and some advice if you plan to build him. So let's jump straight in here and look at his skills. So let's start with his speed. He's coming in at 1283. That's not as fast as some of the quicker Transcendence heroes. In fact, it is on the slow side. Fairy Queen Vesa is slower than him. Aspen is slower than him. But obviously, if you make him a homeowner, that tiny bit of speed difference shouldn't make too much difference because typically homeowners are the fastest heroes, especially when you start adding in Tree of Origin bonuses. Let's look at his skills. So his basic attack is going to deal 320% of attack damage to a single enemy. Not that good on its own. However, he has two different forms, and this is the main part of Mockman you need to understand. He's either in ascending mode or descending mode. He starts ascending if he starts on the front line, and he starts descending if he starts on the back line. There are ways to change this, but typically how you build him should go with front or back positionings, depending on what you want to get from him. So let's read what ascending gives him. So this is if he is on the front line. He's going to deal damage equal to 10% of the target's max HP, and that's going to cap at 1500% of his attack to the frontline enemies twice. So he's going to hit the frontline enemies twice, stripping away 20% of their max HP in total. That's a pretty solid ability. It's not hugely reliable damage, but it could add up. Generally, though, this kind of ability is particularly weak, especially when coupled with a single target. This is not the skill that makes or breaks him. It is just a cute little basic. If he happens to be in descending mode, which is on the back line, or if he's transformed, he is able to hit all the backline enemies for the same amount of damage, 320%. That's the same amount as the single target, but it will definitely crit. So you don't actually have to build Mockman for crit, because his basic attack is guaranteed to crit. However, that's not the same for the active skill. But it's pretty nice, guys. You do get a decent crit off, and yeah, it's cute. It's not the make or break. Let's go on to the actual cool stuff. So we have light slashing. Here we go. So when a battle starts, or when he is substituted into the fight, so that's if he comes in the middle of something like Trial of the Champions, you'll find that he will inflict Omen Rift to one random enemy for 6 rounds, and Omen Rift allows his active skill to be more powerful. That's all you need to know about Omen Rift. It's not one of these fancy abilities. All it does is enhance the active. It's like a condition, right? Are they Omen Rifted? Yes or no? Anyway, let's carry on reading. If he's in the front line, the state of Star Ascending takes over. So this is the normal things we expect. This is what I was telling you about him being in Star Ascending or Star Descending. So all of that is just explaining how that works. The main stuff is what he gets as a bonus. So if he's in Ascending form, which is on the front line, at the end of each round, he's going to heal, and he's going to increase all allies' block by 45%. So this means that block enhancement is going to give him just a flat 45% block. You can give him block in other ways, so you do not need to build this guy for block. If you see anyone building him for block, they're being silly, because you can just give him block as an imprint, right? I mean, these imprints don't do it, but you can give him 60% block from an imprint. You can get block from a star spawn. You can give him block by using him on a Seer Who team. You don't need to build him block attack, which is what some people might think, but yeah, it's totally unnecessary. And block doesn't help him at all. The only way block would help him is if you ran him on a Seer Who team. So yeah, just run him for damage or speed. You don't need to run block. Don't let that trick you. Anyway, let's carry on reading. There is the descending form. So when he's in his aggressive mode or on the back line, he's going to increase all damage dealt by 50%. That's whopping. That's a 50% damage boost just for him. And at the end of the round, all allies will gain 45% precision. And that works out as I think around a 12% all damage dealt increase. It's basically this times 0.3, which is a pretty solid damage increase for your team. Is it the make or break? No, it's not going to be like a huge amount of damage, but it adds up. And also precision is going to get around block. So funnily enough, if block teams become meta and Seer Who does destroy the meta with this new kind of 45% block bonus passive for teams, then yeah, you can just counter that with a good amount of precision. Precision caps at 150%, so you can go nuts when it comes to precision. And then yeah, Seer Whos will fall apart. Fun little thing you can do there if you want to counter that, and that becomes the meta against the people you're trying to beat. Now let's take a look at this final passive. When he is in the Star Ascending form, so that's the one he gets when he starts on the front line, if he takes an active skill or basic attack against him, there's a 50% chance he will gain a layer of Awakening Energy. And Awakening Energy is something that allows him to change form. We'll read more on that later. He also has a chance to restore HP equal to 30% of his matched HP, so he can heal when taking damage, which is cute, but that healing is not massive. And when he releases an active skill or basic attack whilst in the descending form, he will gain a layer of awakening energy. So he will rack up more awakening energy when getting hit than he will from doing attacks, because the one thing you need to realize is him doing an attack is something he's capped at once per round. In addition, if he gets CC'd, it might not happen at all. However, him getting hit, that happens unconditionally. He just has to get attacked by opponents, and there's a 50% chance then he gains these awakening energies. So what does it do? Well, for every 10 layers of awakening energy, he gains a layer of awakening, and then makes the switch between star ascending and star descending. So what you can do, and what I recommend, is you run him on the front line defensively first, with maybe like some Seahus. That gives him time to rack up some bonuses, and then he switches into descending form and finishes off the opponents after you've managed to gain a ton of buffs and potentially whittle down their team. People at first may be like, oh, this isn't very good because he's going to switch halfway through and not play to what I want him to do. But that's actually a good thing. If you can switch from the block mode to an aggressive mode, it's really helpful because Seahu drops off as your team begins to die. But in that time as well, Mockman will hopefully switch to his descending mode and deal a ton of damage. But that's not necessarily what makes him good. Let's look at the active skill. First of all, he's going to deal damage to the backline enemies twice with a 50% chance to inflict taunt. So he has a CC effect that forces opponents to hit him, and also has the added ability to affect their all damage dealt by 33% with a reduction. So that's a 33% damage reduction to opponents if they get hit by this taunt ability. So yeah, I want this to go off. That's really, really cool. Afterward, he will then inflict Omen Rift on one random enemy who doesn't have it, and it'll last for 6 rounds. Then he'll consume all layers of awakening he has, and with every layer of awakening inflicted, Omen Rift will happen one more time. So that's great. He's just going to spread this Omen Rift all over the opponents, and then the skill effect takes place depending on what form he is in. If he's in ascending form, which is the one when he's in defensive mode, he will reduce the attack of 2 enemies with the highest attack by 25%, which is a nice debuff, for 2 rounds, and grants himself some more ascending energy for 2 rounds. That's great. Love that. And if he's in descending mode, he's going to reduce the armor of 2 enemies with the lowest HP by 60% for 2 rounds, chases those enemies with the Omen Rift, and deals 800% of attack damage with a 50% chance to then chase and attack a further additional chance up to 5 times. So he's just going to hopefully deal a ton of damage with these Omen Rifts, but it is very situational. It's a coin toss. It's 50%. You don't need to rely on this for damage. But yeah, that's going to chase after people who have the Omen Rift, and each chase and attack is going to give him an additional layer of awakening energy. Now, try not to get confused between ascending energy and awakening energy. This is where the biggest confusion is going to lie, but ascending energy is his most powerful ability. When he takes an active skill or basic attack, he gains the layer of awakening energy, which is just what's given to him by the ascending energy, but the key thing is he then deals 1200% of attack damage to all enemies, and then deals damage equal to 50% of the same amount of damage 1 additional time to enemies who have Omen of Rift. So this is an insane counterattack. He's basically just like Eloise, but really, really strong in the sense that he gets this counterattack ability. However, to gain ascending energy, you have to do an active skill whilst in the star ascending form. So let me just show you these videos for comparison. If we run him with a golden crown, you will see that he's coming in and he's just taking forever with this fight. He's risking himself getting CC'd by opponents, and he's not really doing much. Sure, he can potentially get a lot of damage off with an active skill, but that's relying on you not getting CC'd and not getting energy stolen. But you need that active skill to give him the ascending energy form, which allows him to counterattack. The soonest you can possibly get that active skill whilst using a golden crown without energy feed is round 2, which is way too much time for an opponent to potentially steal your energy with a Lord of Fear Aspen, a carry, or even potentially an Eos. So what I recommend is you instead do what you now see on screen, which is run him with a Melodic Strings. This allows him to do this active skill early, which means he's gaining the ascending energy form for 2 rounds straight away. So when in this mode, he's going to counter attack opponents, and just watch, every time he gets hit, he is dealing a ton of damage to the opponents and tearing through their health. That is not some special ability from an attack. This is his counterattack you're seeing that's doing all of that damage. That means you should definitely be running this guy with a splendid Melodic Strings as fast as possible so he gets this mode up really quickly and then he can get hit. Don't build him for block. I don't want to see that. Don't build him for just attack. We need him to be as fast as possible so that he's quicker than your opponents. If he's automatically quicker, then sure, go ahead, run attack HP, whatever you've got to give him damage. But my recommendation is if you cannot be quicker than the opponents, you will not perform as well, because you need him to get this active skill off to gain the counterattack damage, and that is what makes him so good. So basically, the way I want you to think about Star Swordsman Mockman is he is pretty much just a Eloise souped up, because that counterattack is where all the power comes in. And if he does manage to live until the later rounds, he'll switch to Star Descending mode and finish off who is ever there, and that is just how he performs. That's what he does, and it's pretty cool. On an energy feed team, you can hopefully get him to keep doing active skills, so he's going to rack up the ascending form and keep doing all those counterattacks. Maybe you're not running an energy feed team. Maybe you want to run him with sustain, and heroes like Siahu to take advantage of the 45% block he gives to your entire team, because Siahu buffs your entire team by 20% attack and 20% armor after 6 blocks, and that actually is further enhanced to 25% and 25% if he's up to Void 4. So yeah, you can get a lot out of a Siahu with the Mockman, and that's kind of a strategy for PvP. If you're thinking about using him in the Void campaign though, still, Melodic Strings, get him to pop off, could be a potential strategy. If there is no way the enemies can steal your energy though, you can happily run him with a Golden Crown and let him survive. Heck, you could even run him with a Snow Heart, which is a nice way of slowing down the opponents you're fighting and still giving him that really nice counter-attack damage. So yeah, I really like him with energy. I think there are cases where the crown could be good to keep him alive defensively, but honestly, when you're using heroes like Mystic Fairy Freya with him as well, he's going to gain protection and damage reduction from her shields and her abilities. And also, if you run Fairy Queen Vessa as well, you're gaining healing and you're gaining shields. So if you play into a sustain style account, you actually might just get away by building an aggressive Mockman with that Melodic Strings, and your account will perform beautifully. So yeah, he's a pretty cool hero, really nice abilities, and I actually recommend him for a lot of people. He's a hero whose tenants are a little awkward, so we'll go and quickly take a look at those, because I think that's a question a lot of people have been asking. So take a look at his tenants. He has himself and Forkis for tenant spot 1, Sword Flash and Onkiramaru for tenant spot 2, Eloise and Freya for tenant spot 3, and tenant spot 4 is Jara and Saja. So it's a little bit awkward. I would rather hear it was like Vessa and Mystic Fairy Freya. That would be insane. But I don't necessarily know if you need to make him a householder. There could be like a split homes thing you could do here with like Forkis and Eloise, and then run the 2 tenant people on a Vessa or something. I'm not sure. I think people are really going to have a hard think about whether it's worth running him alongside a Sword Flash or just go with Onkiramaru and Saja as your safer picks. You've then also got the Jara problem, because she's a CC hero. If you CC opponents, there's of course the chance that they're not going to attack you, and therefore you're not going to get those counterattacks off from your Mockman. That's not necessarily a bad thing though, because obviously CC in and of itself is winning, so if you've locked down the opponent with CC, then you're actually going to be in a perfectly fine position. The final thing we'll go and take a look at is his core. That's going to be available in the bag. If you click Core of Origin, you can go and take a look at this. I am not going to test him with the core, because to get the core, you have to spend money, and I am still standing by those no spending people. And if you want to know more about why I don't think spending is a good idea right now, I'm actually going to make a video talking about the whole no spending movement and why it's an important thing that we do, not only for the game as a whole, but for the community as well. You might think that all these price changes are, just DH Games reacting to the economic market, but there's more to it than just logic and reason, because at the end of the day, money is it's an entity that's driven by emotion, not by logic. So I'll be making a video talking about the emotional implications of what DH Games have been up to and how that's actually going to affect their business. And I might be totally wrong. It could just be a hot take that you guys find stupid, but still, subscribe if you want to catch that video. Anyway, let's look at Mockman's core. So basically, this allows him to do extra abilities when he switches position. So if he switches, depending on what he switches to, he's going to gain additional abilities for your team. If he switches to Star Ascending mode, all allies gain 6% damage reduction, the effect of which declines by 2% every round. So that's basically a Golden Crown style effect. And when an ally takes an active skill or basic attack, that ally will then launch a counter attack to the attacker, dealing damage equal to 360% of the attacked ally's attack. And if the attacker is inflicted with Omen Rift, they'll do it again, dealing even more damage. So it's a really nice way of giving your entire team counter attack. So if you really like how Eloise counter attacks and keeps on hitting, you can like give this to your entire team, which is quite frankly a nutty ability. Giving your entire team the ability to counterattack, which then scales with their attack, is nuts. It's a really, really nice ability. And if he switches to Descending Form, everyone gains 9% crit, which then declines every round. And also, whenever they do an active skill or basic attack, the ally then chases and attacks the target for further damage, and if they're inflicted with Omen of Rift, they'll do it one more time as well. So basically, all he's doing is allowing your entire team to do additional attacks. He either turns them into Garuda or into Eloise, which is a really, really nice ability. Counterattacks and follow-up attacks are very, very strong abilities. It's useful for tearing through opponents' unbending wills in PvP, and also dealing a lot of pressure to opponents. So if you're facing a really tough game mode where you need to be aggressive and beat them quickly, added pressure from counterattacks and follow-up attacks is a very, very effective way to do that. So yeah, I really, really like this core. I think it's going to be very effective for clearing certain game modes. It is just a shame that as part of this event, it is hidden behind a paywall. If DH Games hadn't adjusted the prices, I would be all over this. I don't normally say, hey, I'm going to spend 700 bucks on an event, but the ability to grab 2 copies of his core, gain all these things as well, and potentially buy a ton of cores of Transcendence myself to then go ahead and build a Mockman for myself, it would have been so powerful. I'd have loved to have a Mockman added to this lineup. It would go so well alongside the Jara, Vesa, and Freya that I already have, and it would have made for a really fun Seahu lineup, but unfortunately, that's nothing available to me right now, and I just have to accept that as it is. So yeah, Mockman is a cool hero. His counterattacks are really, really intuitive. The fact that he taunts opponents and forces them to attack him with that active skill is even more reason for you to use an energy artifact with him, and then the fact that that taunt will then force them to attack him, then triggering his ascended energy form, which then makes him counterattack. It's just a really, really cool hero. But if you do not get that active skill off, he's going to be nowhere near as powerful, because as you saw in those fights, the damage he is able to rack up when he's able to do a ton of counterattacks is ridiculously strong. So yeah, I really like this hero. Could he be a good first Transcendence hero? Maybe, but that remains to be seen. He is a takeover hero, right? He's going to steal the limelight away from the Eloise you're already running. That might be a good thing. It might be a bad thing. It really depends on how you build your account around him. He does seem to have promise, though, as a standalone hero. He's doing a lot to help himself, which for a Transcendence hero is really good. So he may end up being the new Eloise in Transcended form, because his skills are very, very similar, and therefore that means he is able to, of course, synergize really nicely with that strategy if you've already set it up. But of course, the Tenants are going to be a little bit awkward. One final thing, actually, as we mentioned Eloise, is that pivoting from an Eloise style account into Mockman could be a legitimate strat, if only for the fact that both Saja and Eloise are his tenants, as is Onkiramaru. Those 3 heroes are also tenants for Eloise. Well, of course, tenant spot 3 is Eloise, but Saja and Onkiramaru find themselves in Eloise's list of tenants. So if you take a look, you'll see Onkiramaru is tenant spot 1 for Eloise, Saja is tenant spot 2. You should be building ticks anyway, and you should be building carry anyway. So I really, really like that, because you can potentially move from an Eloise team to a Mockman team and still use Eloise, still use Mockman. You can run a Void 3 Eloise, run that Mockman. That's a ton of counterattack damage. That's a lot of pressure for the opponents, and could be a legitimate strategy for a first Transcendence hero. Is it good? That remains to be seen. So I don't want to be heard saying, oh, MK said build Mockman as first Transcendence hero. No, 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 no. I didn't say that. I said there is potential for him to be good. Do not misinterpret me. Don't be a sheep. Anyway, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to subscribe. And of course, happy idling.